Okay, let's try that again. Eric called me to let me know that he will not be able to join us this evening. As many of you know, he was promoted a few months back and his workload has been very, very heavy. So I'll actually be meeting with him this weekend to talk about how we can help with better work-life balance for him so he can begin attending meetings again. He is very, very devoted to the work on the Whitfield's documents project. So we'll be talking about that too. And, I'll keep everyone posted as to that. I haven't heard from Gloria, so hopefully she'll be hopping on soon. But in the meantime, I would like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Do I have a second on that? Stephanie, thank you. And members, since we do have quite a few folks from the community here, which I know we're always very, very happy to see, I just want to ask that if you second something, if you would just, say your name so that Sue knows who's speaking and doesn't have to search through all the little boxes on our screen to figure that out. I'd like to call for an approval of the minutes from our last meeting. Does anyone have any questions, changes, edits?
No, I approve it. Yeah.
All right, and then I'd like to go ahead and call for an approval of the minutes. Can I get a second?
Second, please.
Clarice, thank you. Okay, has anyone received any emails, phone calls, or other outside communication from members of the public regarding topics that will not appear or do not appear in our agenda since our last meeting?
Nope.
Nope.
I mean, I can tell you some of the statistics from our Facebook page. We've gotten a lot of clicks and stuff from there, so we're definitely being recognized by our community. I did get quite a few messages about the forum that we had as being a positive experience. So yeah, it's all good stuff.
That actually reminds me, I just wanted to clarify, during the meeting itself, it looked like we had, the forum itself, it looked like we had about 226 participants at our peak. When I ran a report from Zoom the next morning, because some members of the community and beyond who were attending that forum were able to log in through one email on multiple devices, we actually had an attendance of 314. About 220 of those were Guilford residents, and we had people logging in from as far away as California. When I checked the link to the recording of the forum yesterday morning, we'd already had the forum had already had 225 views. So again, I just want to go on the record extending my thanks to Guilford TV, GCTV, for posting that recording and making it accessible to people who couldn't be there for the forum itself. Okay. Do we have any members of the public who would like to address the commission in our public forum? No? Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and move to our first guest speaker of the evening. We're very pleased to have Dr. Paul Freeman, Superintendent of Guilford Schools, with us here this evening. Before we get started, I do want to remind all members of the public that we are very happy that you're here. You're very welcome here. We do not take questions or comments from the public during our regular meeting, though you are always very welcome to address the commission or discuss any topics that are of importance to you during our public forum. Our next meeting will be the second Tuesday in September. So that being said, Paul, I am going to turn things over to you.
Sure, thank you very much. And thank you all for inviting me back tonight. I really am excited to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I do want to try out a new graphic that we are working with. And just give me 1 second here. I went ahead and displayed it on my screen before I shared the screen with all of you. So and Joe, you said you shared the ability for me to share my screen. There it is.
Sorry, I made you a co-host, which I thought would enable that.
Yep, it looks like I had it now. There you go. You're all looking at my email. Let's get that down. So can you all see the slide that I'm displaying? So
Yes.
the invitation tonight was to talk about the specific work, the discrete work that the Guilford Public Schools are in fact engaging in the areas of equity and social justice. There's been a lot of conversation about what the schools are doing or are not doing. And so what I'm happy to share with you tonight are the 6 discrete actions that the school has been taking and continues to take moving forward around this topic of equity and social justice. The fact is, what we're doing is we're attempting to support all of our students. We believe that these conversations, we believe that creating classroom environments that openly engage in conversations about the topics of race and equity and social justice, both historically and currently. And we believe that environments that are supportive of all of our students benefit all of our students. This is not an action that we're taking for one population or for discrete populations within our school system. This work is important for all of our kids, for every single student who passes through the halls of Guilford schools. All of our students need to be prepared to engage in these difficult conversations, and all of our students benefit when our schools have a focus on justice. Justice for all is an important, right, is an important founding concern. So let me take you through the actual things that we're doing. We are engaging in a curricular self-audit. To conduct that self-audit, we're focusing initially in the subject areas of social studies and English language arts, and we're beginning with the 5th through 12th grades. We are using a tool, which is the Culturally Responsive Curriculum Scorecard that has been created by the Metropolitan Center for Research on Equity and Transformation of Schools at New York University. Dr. Don Seiler from St. Joseph's University is assisting us as we conduct that self-audit. The purpose of the audit is an attempt to identify unintentional areas of implicit bias within those 2 curricula, essentially making sure that our curricula stand up to the investigative, to the constructivist approaches that we preach throughout all of our system. We want to look at those curricula and make sure that we are not inadvertently presenting a single narrative or a single story when we look at complicated topics like history and literature. Much of the conversation that has been happening in town around text selection falls into this area. Do we have diverse texts? Do our texts come from diverse authors? When we present complex topics, do we present them in a way that encourages and engages critical thinking? Again, looking for those areas where we may be unintentionally presenting a simplified, a whitewashed, a single version of complicated stories. So that's the first piece. We've been working with Dr. Seiler. We have been engaging in that for the second half of this past school year. That work has been challenging and slow in the face of the pandemic. We have been careful about the weight that that places on our teaching staff, because when we talk about a self-audit, that workload doesn't fall to me. That workload falls to the teachers in the classrooms who have gone through a very challenging year. We're asking them to redesign their instruction on a daily basis. So that has moved more slowly than we would have preferred as we've balanced that work against the work of the pandemic. Additionally, we have been working to diversify our teacher workforce. If we want to build an environment, a school system where all of our students feel welcome and supported and understood and advocated for, it would be great if our teacher workforce could represent a broader palette. And so we've done 2 specific things under this item. We have participated this year in the Connecticut Teacher Residency Program. With 25 other school systems, we are working to create a pipeline to bring more teachers of color into the certified teaching ranks in the state of Connecticut. So this year, we will be offering one paid residency. An individual who is an aspiring teacher will be working in our school system during the day as a paraprofessional, studying to complete her certification studies at night, and she will secure teacher certification through this process. In exchange for our support through this process, should we choose to hire this individual, she'll be committed to 3 years of teaching in the Guilford Public Schools. As I said, there's about 25 school districts engaging in this work collaboratively across the country. It is part of the governor's initiative to diversify the teacher workforce statewide. Additionally, we have been working with our HR department, and we're just working to more actively recruit teachers of color from out of state. Connecticut has a shortage, and so we have created a few relationships with HBCUs. We have worked with a company that advises folks who are working on recruiting, and we're more actively working to recruit more diverse teacher workforce as we move forward. That's a challenge in Connecticut. Teachers of color in the state of Connecticut are an identified shortage area. It is difficult the teacher workforce is something like 90% identify as white at this time. So that's something that we'll continue working on. Additionally, we have created a position, we've created a contractual position for a family equity liaison. This would be one position in our school district. This would be a professional who presents himself to the community as somebody who is there for parents or for students who feel that their child is not being treated fairly or is not having his or her needs met because of the way they identify. So whether that has to do with sexual orientation or gender identity or race or ethnicity or religious affiliation, anybody who feels that their child is not having their needs met can reach out to this individual. This individual would first listen to the family, then help to coach the family to understand the vehicles that exist in the school system and the ways that we can all advocate for our children within the school system, but also support and advocate for that family with building administrators if necessary. Additionally, we anticipate that this individual is going to help coach our principals to continue to build those environments that are culturally responsive and sustaining. Importantly, very importantly, this individual will also work directly with me, looking across all of these contacts to attempt to identify patterns or systemic issues that we need to address, not individually, but systemically. So it is an individual support for parents who feel they need someone to advocate for them and for their children within the system, but it is also an attempt to identify those patterns and improve our structures systemically as well. An important piece is that we are continuing with teacher professional learning. The teacher professional learning focuses primarily on that idea of creating a culturally responsive and sustaining environment. We are leaning heavily on a document that was created by New York State. It is the Culturally Responsive and Sustaining Education Framework. Again, a lot of this work came out of NYU. And in this document, when we talk about the culturally responsive and sustaining environment, there's 4 characteristics that are identified. It is creating a welcoming and affirming environment. It is fostering high expectations and rigorous instruction for all students. It means identifying inclusive curriculum and assessments. So it ties back to that curricular audit that we talked about. And it means engaging in ongoing professional learning. And that's what we're talking about. That's what we mean when we talk about culturally responsive and sustaining environments. To say it a little more specifically on the bottom of the slide, it means we want our classrooms to be places where all voices can be heard, where no minority voices are silenced in the classroom. It means that students can see themselves reflected in the texts and materials that we use in the classroom. And it means that teachers are becoming more skillful about facilitating these conversations, because these can be challenging conversations, and they can really be intimidating conversations to lead at a classroom setting when a teacher feels that there are people waiting to catch them crossing a line. And so we need to continue this professional learning for our teachers so that they can feel confident in creating these environments and fostering these conversations and selecting these diverse texts in their classrooms. Specifically, when we talk about the study of history, it means telling the whole story, the whole complicated, difficult story, and not just telling the parts of the story that make us feel good about our history, but embracing the whole story around our history. As our teachers continue in that learning, and I want to mention the most important component, the most important structural and systemic component to that learning are the instructional coaches who work in our systems. Again, that's a lot to ask of a teacher. That is a lot of learning to take on, and it's a lot of practice and trial and error and being comfortable taking those risks. We have full-time professional developers in the Guilford Public Schools, the instructional coaches. Our coaches will continue to work with Dr. Seiler, and then they will be one of the main vehicles that bring that learning back into the classrooms, and in fact be the support for the teachers as they engage that work right there in the classroom in real time with real live kids. Additionally, as the teachers continue that instructional work, the leadership team, including myself, will continue our learning about creating these environments, creating environments that support teachers as they roll out that type of instructional setting, making sure that our parents know about the Family Equity Liaison so that they know that they've got multiple vehicles to reach out when they need support, to the classroom teacher, to the school counselor, to the principal, but also to this equity liaison, to make sure that we're building this environment in a way that is inclusive of all. So the principals will continue working with trainers from ACEs, possibly from CERC. I will continue working with other superintendents from around the state, with Dr. Title from Harvard, as we build our capacity to build school environments that support the classroom environments that we're focused on. And then finally, we're engaging in community collaborations like this one. As we've had this conversation, the school district and I will continue to partner with all of you, with this group, with our PTOs and our ABAR groups, with the Guilford Foundation, with the Guilford Fund for Education. I have met periodically and infrequently with local faith leaders from around this community. That's an important piece. We work closely with the Guilford Police Department and our school resource officer, and we work closely with town government, including Parks and Recreation, the Day organization, and importantly, we work closely with our neighbors. Guilford is not the only community or school district engaging in this work, and so we work closely with Madison School District. We have partnered with the Country School. We work with districts across the state as we work to bring this work forward. You know, it's only been 10 minutes that I've been talking, and I have just thumbnailed all of the work that has been at the center of all of this conversation in Guilford. I believe that the puzzle pieces that you see here before are reasonable, and they're hard to argue about. We think that each one of them is important in its discrete existence. We think they fit together and make a logical palette as we start to move forward. But we also don't think that they should be intimidating or threatening. If you look at any one, I'm happy to have deeper conversation about what it is, why we're doing it. And in fact, one of my favorite comments from all of the conversations this year as we've been discussing this came from one of our high school teachers at a curriculum and instruction assessment meeting not long ago, a few months back. Dr. Seiler was updating the board on his work, and his work falls into two really important buckets here: the curricular self-audit as well as the teacher professional learning. And as he was updating the board on the work that he is doing, George Cooksey, a high school English teacher, head of the English department, was in the audience. George came to the podium for an agenda item that followed Dr. Seiler's, and his comment was, while this is all really exciting, I want to remind you that it's not new. This is stuff that we've been trying to do for 10 years in Guilford. It's work that we know needs to get done. It's work that we've been talking about for a long time. And speaking as a teacher, he just said, this doesn't feel new to me. This doesn't feel radical to me. This feels like we're trying to finally put our money where our mouth is. We are finally trying to step up and do what we've been talking about for a long time. And I just really appreciated that comment. So Joe, again, thank you for the time. I appreciated being able to share this, and I'm really looking forward to answering questions or having conversation about it.
Great, thank you, Paul. So I want to open this up to the members of the commission. Does anyone have any questions, Alex? I think I just saw your hand go up, and I can't see all of you on my screen right now. Alex just happened to be at the bottom of my screen. So please feel free to call out when he's finished. Alex, please.
You spoke about some processes. I'm wondering about your conception of time frame and the way you're thinking about goals. Do you have time frame goals in mind, or is this more of a constant effort that doesn't necessarily end because it's something to just be managed over time?
I think it's much more of that. I think that this is work that we need to continue to work on, and it's not going to go away. I don't think that we're going to be able to say that we have reached an equitable and socially just environment in the Guilford Public Schools and plant a flag at that moment. I do think that we will be able to say with some confidence that the curricular self-audit will be completed, I'd say, before the middle of this coming school year. But then we've got other subject areas and other grade levels that we need to move on to. And then the important piece with any curricular work is then the implementation. Right? We've got really good curricula. It's the idea of making sure that we're bringing that to scale, that teachers right, are trained in the teacher moves that it takes to be able to do that consistently and regularly. I think some pieces are things that we can mark. I think that we will certainly be able to follow the demographics of the teacher workforce, and we should be able to mark how we're doing in that area. Others are going to be a little more nebulous. Teacher training, again, we believe that teacher training is an ongoing, it's an ongoing event, and it's an ongoing investment. Some years ago, when we first brought instructional coaches into the classroom, into the district, the question was, well, how long will you need the coaches before the teachers get caught up and then you can release the coaches? And my response is, when will the Yankees and the Red Sox stop hiring a pitching coach? You can have the best talent in the world, you still need ongoing coaching. And so I really do think that most of these will continue to be ongoing investments and efforts. I think we need to be able to mark growth and success in all of these areas, and we're going to have to look at the ways to do that and to communicate that out to the community.
I have a two-part question, if you don't mind. Hi, Paul. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's nice to see you again. I have two questions. One, can you talk a little bit more about the efforts to diversify the teacher workforce in Guilford? I know you and I have spoken about that a couple of different times. And I know that's something that has been in the works for a few years, but what do you say to those who would come back with the comment, well, you know, this is like affirmative action, like now you're going out of your way to hire teachers of color, which, by the way, teachers of color doesn't necessarily mean you know, just Black teachers. It could be of, you know, Southern Asian descent, could be Pacific Islander, whatever makes up part of that rainbow. But what do you say to those folks that are, well, now you're keeping other teachers who are just as qualified from getting the job?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And, you know, there's a question and answer document on our website now with the other equity materials. We were asked if we were laying off white teachers in order to be able to hire teachers of color. The answer to that is simply no, right? No one is losing a job to make space for somebody else. But as we have openings that come up, the other question is, well, should you be looking for diverse teachers or should you be looking for the best teachers? And my answer is yes, and, right? It's both and of those things. I wish I knew how to. I wish I knew how to credit this quote, but somebody once said that genius never existed in or, it only existed in and. I don't know who said it, and I don't know if it's actually a real quote. I don't remember where I heard it, but I like it, right? We're not looking for teachers with more diverse experiences and backgrounds and histories and compromising quality. We're looking for both. When we have an elementary opening in Guilford Public Schools, we will often receive as many as 200 applications. So we're going to go into that and look for the talent and the commitment and the dispositions that we want. And if we can also bring a teacher into the classroom that children in Guilford will be able to see, and in that person see themselves, then that's a benefit too. And really important in Guilford, to bring some people into the district so that many students can look at that teacher, and in that teacher not see someone who reflects themselves. That's a really enormously important lesson for communities like Guilford as well. In a much earlier part of my career, I was a teacher by contract, but the school district in which I worked had extended some administrative opportunities. It was a really under-administered school district, and so I was the assistant to the principal. I was not the assistant principal. I was the assistant to the principal. I think on my resume, I wrote "to" in a smaller font, so it would look like assistant principal on my resume. But I would often join that principal in student discipline issues or parent meetings. That principal happened to be a woman of color, and she was a doctor. And on more than one occasion, and it was a community that was very similar to Guilford, the two of us would be in the office as a couple parents would come into the office to talk with us. And on more than one occasion, the parent would walk straight to me and extend a hand and say, "Dr. Jeffries, nice to meet you." And I'd have to say, no, I'm just Mr. Freeman. That's Dr. Jeffries right there. That's who you're talking to today. And that wasn't meant to be insulting. That wasn't done on purpose. But they walked into a room and they assumed that I was the doctor and I was the principal of the building for any number of reasons, but they made that assumption. If our children grow up in a school system where all of the teachers and all of the principals all look like me, then there's a better chance that our kids will grow up to make those same assumptions. If we have a district where we've got people of color and people with different backgrounds and people with different life experiences, and our children see all of them as strong, knowledgeable, caring leaders, then it's less likely that our kids are going to grow up making those same often innocent assumptions and mistakes. And so, that's why we really need to keep working on this. Again, the state of Connecticut is facing this teacher shortage, right? Guilford is up, right? We're competing against a lot of every other school district. I teach at UConn in both the principal and in the superintendent preparation programs. And it is not unusual in those settings when I'm working with aspiring leaders of color that they tell me that they want to work in New Haven or Hartford because they want to be there and give to those communities and be there for the students who do see themselves in them. And I am constantly saying, yes, but you can make an equally important contribution, although a different kind of contribution, by working in other communities as well, where the students don't necessarily see themselves reflected in you, because that's an important relationship too.
Yeah, and I appreciate the depth of that answer. Thank you for taking the time to do so. Just as a Guilford native, I think I can count on one hand, maybe a finger on the other hand, how many teachers of color I saw coming up through Cox and Baldwin and Adams. So I can understand how difficult that push must be, especially now with all the attention Guilford's getting. It's probably scaring some folks away, hopefully not. But that's why we're here doing what we do, so that doesn't happen. So the second question I had is sort of along the same lines. And again, I'm asking these questions because I know that they've been asked, probably not in the proper forms, and I'm just trying to get, an answer on record. So hopefully people can understand what's really happening. In addition to diversifying the classrooms in terms of the texts that you're using and the different resources and things like that, there's been a question of, well, why not also include texts and resources for the other side? So the opinions or the views that are not necessarily supportive of culturally responsive teaching, because for some folks that is teaching the whole picture. I realize that there's, in teaching that, it's a very fine line. So I'm just wondering how you respond to that sort of pushback.
Yeah, I appreciate that question too, and I'll try not to lengthen this one with personal stories. That question has most often come up around professional texts that I have shared with teachers and principals in the district. Let me first answer it in the classroom though. In the classroom, we do work really hard to provide the whole story. When we are debating something like entering World War I, our students are looking at primary texts from the time that was a really difficult decision for our country to make. They're reading editorials and arguments on both sides of that. I mean, it's easy for us to look back now and say, well, of course we needed to enter World War I. It was World War I. We had to, but at the time, it was a really important question. Should the US stay out of a European war, or should the US enter a European war? In those cases, the students are reading texts that are on both sides of the argument. When we study the Civil War, the students are going to look at arguments on both sides of succession. When they look at Lincoln making difficult decisions, they're going to look at why some decisions were so long in coming. They're going to look at why he tried to compromise for a long, long time before committing to war. So they do look at those. Specifically, there are 3 texts that have been questions that I have shared with professionals in the district. We bought 10 copies of White Fragility and shared it with half of the leadership team in the district. We bought 10 copies of Waking Up White and shared that with half of the leadership team. We broke up into 2 different book clubs and we each read those books, and there were members of our leadership team who found part of those books challenging, and we talked about those books. We didn't read them and start preaching those books. We read them and tried to understand them. We criticized and critiqued them, as well as talked about what in those books connected and rang true for us. And then I also bought a copy of How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi for every teacher in the school district. And this was not this summer, it was last summer. When we purchased that book, George Floyd had just recently been killed. There were still protests occurring in cities all across the country, and there was a lot of attention and talk to civil rights and what we were doing. It was the same time that we were taking action on our mascot at Guilford High School and moving in that direction. We have done for a long time a good job in Guilford Public Schools teaching in a traditional way. Our students who were engaging with us at that time, and they were engaging with us around the protests that were happening across the country, as they were engaging in the mascot conversation that they were having, they began sharing with us, and we had a graduate who shared this just at our last Board of Education meeting, that they felt that they got a solid academic and traditional education in Guilford Public Schools. They said that they didn't feel prepared when they went outside of Guilford to university or to more metropolitan places to live, and began finding out that there was debate about some of the ways in which we teach history, that there were important conversations about race and equity happening in our country, and they felt that we hadn't introduced them clearly enough to those conversations. The idea of sharing Kendi's work was intentionally to be provocative. Here was a historian who was telling us that being good at not being racist wasn't enough. He was challenging us to say, how can you be more actively anti-racist? How can you more actively work to make your school environment a place that is equitable and just, a place that is culturally responsive and sustaining. So Kendi was put out because he was presenting a counter narrative to a narrative that was already really well established here in Guilford. To say that you are going to present the counter narrative and then you have to give equal time to the dominant narrative that already dominates most of the work in the space and the teaching that's happening doesn't really make sense as you start to drill into it. Now, we weren't saying that we need to throw away everything that we've ever done. We weren't saying that we're going to stop presenting the dominant narrative. What we were saying is we should think about what this person has to say. He challenges the way we're thinking about things, and that's healthy. And we've done that for a really long time in Guilford Public Schools. We've had Sugata Mitra come to Guilford and speak to leaders and teachers twice. Sugata Mitra is a TED speaker. He's won the TED Prize, and his thesis is that teachers are obsolete. Now, I want to say here publicly on the record, I don't believe that teachers are obsolete, but bringing him in to say that to our teaching staff and to explain why he makes that argument is provocative in a good way. It gets us to question old assumptions and it shakes us out of our comfort zone a little bit. The Kendi book was used in very much the same way, not to suggest that we're all going to begin preaching what Kendi writes about, but that we should be open enough to read what Kendi has to say and let it shake us a little bit in our comfort zone, because that's healthy. That's how we learn, and that's what we as professionals should be doing. So that's why we didn't present the counter pieces that would argue against Kendi's work. I'll also again note, this is really, really important. Teachers took that book home for the summer with an invitation from me to read it. It has not been used in training with teachers. It has not been used in many of the ways that it seems to be portrayed around the community. We sent the teachers home this year with a book, and the title of that one is Think Again. And it encourages people, it pushes people to acknowledge that unlearning the things you already know is actually a lot harder than learning something brand new. It's not unusual for us to try to push the professionals in this school district into uncomfortable spaces. That answer was just as long, even though I didn't include a personal story.
But just as necessary and thorough. I appreciate, again, your time on that. So I think that's all from me for now. Thank you.
I certainly have a few questions.
Okay, hold on, Clarice. Actually, Juan's had his hand up forever. So Juan, I want to turn this over to you first. Clarice, I don't know if you had questions before Alex put his hand up. So we can do a cage match around that, or you can decide amongst the two of you which one, who wants to go first. But first, Juan, please.
No, sure. I actually, Paul already answered some of the questions I have. I just want to make a couple of comments. First, thank him for great presentation. I think that, Paul, you address most, if not all, the questions that I've heard from our community around what you're doing in the school system. And from both sides, the ones that have been supportive and the one that have been against what you're doing. As a parent of two kids that had gone through the Guilford school system, one of them in college now, other one will be a junior this year. I really appreciate what you're trying to do. I don't want my kids to just learn around, to be around in Guilford, right? They have to get, education to face what is outside Guilford too. So, it's only in it's not about Guilford, Connecticut. It's about the whole U.S. and the whole world. And more important, I think that in the future they will appreciate what they're getting with this initiative, especially when they're looking for the job, right? So when you look at corporate America and many businesses, this is critical, right? When you hire new hires, that they come with knowledge around equity, diversity, and so on. So this is something that I believe will really be able to help our kids as they move forward from school, college, and looking for a job. One question that I have, Paul, is that have you looked at how to link what you're doing here in the school system to the next step, what is happening in college? I know we have courses that we teach from college into high school, right? So some linkage like um, environmental engineering and so on. Have you considered, once you establish, of course, first is to even expand it on what's happening in college?
I think so. I don't know that we've thought real clearly about the instructional linkage between the sort of this sort of pedagogy pieces that we're talking about here tonight. But I do want to reiterate, in our school system, we have early college credit courses that we offer. We have advanced placement courses that we offer. We have international baccalaureate courses that we offer in our school system. The International Baccalaureate program, in the way that the classes integrate and in the way that it works to build global citizens, does itself address many of the items that we have talked about tonight, both the pedagogical and the social justice components that is built into that. I have heard suggestions around the community that we are eliminating or reducing advanced coursework in the Guilford Public Schools, somehow as a consequence of the equity work, and that's completely untrue. We brought the IB to the school system just a few years ago. We are not in any way reducing or curtailing the rigor or the challenge or the advanced opportunities that we offer in the schools. I do know that universities, like the workplace that you referenced, are having these conversations and doing this work as well. Educational preparation schools are talking about equity and social justice and culturally responsive and sustaining instruction. So I do believe that if we've got students who want to move on to become part of the education field, that this benefits them as well as it just benefits all kids. That's a vague answer. You've actually got me thinking one. I think that there's I think the quick answer to what you ask is not really, not in the way that I hear you describing it. And maybe we need to think more deeply about that.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Clarice, I've asked a question. Ask a question.
Thank you. It actually kind of goes in line with what you were saying, Alex, about having a timeline, because Dr. Freeman, you have mentioned time and time again that the work that you're doing is from grades 5 through 12. And myself, and I know a lot of the community that's present here in our meeting today, we have elementary school age kids, and we have to have these conversations with elementary school age kids. Personally, my family has had to have this conversation with my 7-year-old, because there was a rise in Asian hate crimes. When the Atlanta shooting happened, we had to talk to him about that. And those that don't know, we're a multicultural family. We are immigrants. My kids are first generation Americans, as well as their other nationalities. And, it is fantastic. I applaud you for starting the work at 5th grade and up, but we really need to go from kindergarten on, because it's a reality for those of us that have to deal with this. And frankly, it's a little too late for his classmates to get an understanding of what he might experience, by 5th grade. I want to know, when are you going to implement this work in the elementary schools? Is it going to be when he graduates? Is it going to be by the time my younger daughter is in kindergarten? Because frankly, that's when it needs to be it can't be excluded forever. Like I would frankly like a date, a year, a school year of when you're going to start implementing this, because it happens. And, you know, sometimes it's something small and sometimes it's something big. You know, like a very small example, you know, happens on St. Patrick's Day for my son, where, you know, he came, I picked him up and he said, "Oh, what are we going to do for St. Patrick's Day?" I'm like, "Nothing, we're not Irish. We don't celebrate that." And he said that you know, there was this understanding that everybody's Irish on St. Patrick's Day. And that really angered me because that's not part of his heritage. It's not something that, you know, for me to explain to him that there are many other things that we celebrate. There are many other things in our culture that is somebody else's culture. And, you know, it's great to learn about it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we celebrate it. So when are we going to get this to the elementary school?
So I appreciate the question. It's an important question, and I know that you've asked me before, and I've encouraged you to keep asking it. What I will point out, I know, and I appreciate it. The red puzzle piece, the curricular self-audit, is the only piece that you're looking at tonight that is limited to grades 5 through 12, and it's only 2 subject areas out of 13 that we teach in our school system. All of the other puzzle pieces are in place pre-K through 12. And so the important ones to focus on there are the teacher and leader professional training. When we talk about training teachers to create classrooms that are culturally and responsively, are culturally sustaining and responsive, that is happening at all grade levels. When we have talked about text selection, that is happening more broadly. It is the specific curricular audit and the use of the curricular audit scorecard that right now had to start somewhere. And that's the piece that is currently at social studies and English language arts 5 through 12. I can't give you a date tonight, but what I can say is next, as we complete that and as we talk about how we will implement, what we will do is stick with social studies and language arts and begin marching down the grades. We will not now move to science 5 through 12. So it's not a specific commitment of a date, but we do intend to continue that work and to continue it in the areas of social studies and English language arts and looking at what that means in the lower grade levels. You know, it looks a little different. We started 5 through 12 because it is in the schools of Baldwin, Adams, and the high school where we have teachers who are identified by certification disciplines. We don't have social studies and English language arts teachers at the elementary level. We have generalist teachers who teach everything at the elementary. I can assure you it's coming. I can assure you it won't be as quickly as you want, but I can assure you that it will be before your children graduate.
I'll ask you again next time we meet then.
Ask me again. I appreciate the impatience. It's helpful.
Yeah.
Is it my turn, Joe?
It is, Alex. Please go ahead.
So my first question, Paul, was a little bit of a softball. I'm going to hit a little harder this time, but I do want to thank you for acknowledging, speaking as a former high school English teacher, that high school English teachers are the wisest of all teachers.
I don't remember saying that. I am also a certified English teacher.
Yeah, there we go. So you described a lot of work that a lot of adults are going to be doing. And you said a lot of ways that these things are not going to impact kids. The course offerings are still there, right? For example, that's really, really important. You're talking about a lot of work that's being done by the adults, by the educators. How is this, what is, as part of this larger initiative, are there burdens on students? How is this going to affect students and students' experiences, both students of color and from underrepresented groups and historically marginalized groups, and students that are not from those groups or with those identities?
I think the big piece is that we expect that all students will begin to experience school in a different way, that students are going to begin to understand that in all sorts of areas, whether it's in literature, whether it is in science, whether that it's in mathematics or in the study of history, that there's usually more than one correct answer, that there's usually more than one side to a story. We really want to be we want to continue to invest in the constructivist approach that we have claimed for a long time. We want students to be capable of making their own meaning, and we want them to be able to do that collaboratively among themselves. And that work is facilitated by the teacher in the classroom. In many ways, I think that we've done some of our best work around that pedagogical stance in math and in science. And I think that in some of the richest areas, we've made some of the least headway. And I think it's because it's difficult, because it brings up a lot of emotion and a lot of anger and a lot of worry. And those areas become fraught areas. And we're seeing that play out all across the country in Board of Education meetings. We want to continue to build that environment, and we want to do it in a way that is as invitational as it can be, and is not confrontational. We would rather, now that's not to say that we're not going to do it because it brings up tough feelings and it makes people nervous and it creates anxiety. We still have to do it, but we want to do it in a way that allows people to enter the conversation. That needs to include students, right? We've talked a lot this last year about the students and recent graduates who have raised their voices to become part of this conversation. I have been in conversation with high school teachers and club sponsors at the high school. How does the high school student government enter into this conversation? We have a club for leadership. We have a unity club. We have a gay straight alliance at our high school. How do these student organizations get their voices into this conversation, and not just by engaging in what's happening on social media? Our students have raised their voices in the social media debate that's happening around some of these ideas. But how do we do that in a way that is respectful, that gives them an opportunity to be part of that voice, and still follows the structures of curriculum and the commitment that we have to the town? Right, there are board policies about how curricula get changed and what timeline, and when the board does that, and how community members have an opportunity to comment before those changes are implemented. We need to balance all of that, and so I do hope that our students see some of this work happening, but I also need to share that, and it's come up a few times in this past week, a lot of the conversation around the topics that you see on the slide in front of you is happening way up high at the adult and even at the political level. And I think if you spoke to most students and teachers in the classroom, they're going to tell you that a lot of what we're doing day to day in the classroom has not changed all of that much. And we need to make sure that the conversation that's happening way up here continues to percolate down, so that our students are saying, we're seeing more diverse faces walking the halls among faculty. And I know that I can reach out to this individual if I feel that I have a problem, for support. And when I read a letter to the editor talking about culturally responsive and sustaining instruction, I actually have a sense of what that means, because I've talked about that stuff, or I've seen my teachers make these moves. I'm not sure that we're there yet. That has not, I don't believe it's percolated down to the level that if we polled all of our students, and this is one of those measures of success, we can't just keep talking about it at this level and allow it to be teacher conversations that don't change classroom practices. I'm not sure if I got way off topic or not, Alex. I think I'm talking around your question.
If I may, Dr. Freeman,
Wait, Clarice, sorry, Stephanie's had her hand up. So Stephanie had her hand up. I want to take one question from Stephanie, Your
goes with
question, Clarice, and then I have one of my own, and we're at 8 o'clock already. So 3 more questions, and then Paul, we're gonna let you go. I feel like we could talk about this all night.
I could talk about this all night.
Okay, so Stephanie, Clarice, I have a question, and then we will release you back into the wild. Oh, Steph, you're muted. Sorry.
Every time. Sorry about that. Hopefully this will be a quick one for you. This is piggybacking on something Clarice had mentioned about getting into the elementary schools. I guess it's more of a hopeful suggestion and an ask on how we get this done. I would really like to see Native American or Indigenous Peoples Day come back to the elementary schools. That was something we did when I was at Cox, and it was one of the best ways to learn about the history of this area, of the Mononcatucks and the Indigenous peoples here. I'm not sure why Guilford Early Days has moved into a direction that does not include some of that. But I would really like to see Early Guilford Days program expand a little bit and become a little bit more diverse in how they tell the story of our history. So if there's some way that the Human Rights Commission or even another group in town can help get that going and make that happen, I'd love to talk to whomever is necessary. I'm just hoping maybe a guy who knows a guy that I could talk to.
It's a really good suggestion, and as we developed a relationship with the Akumat Initiative, as we talked about the mascot, and we had said that we wanted to get back and talk with them about the instructional component. We always said that we weren't walking away from Native American history. We were just stepping away from the Native American mascot. So I appreciate the reminder. And I'd like to see Akumat involved in that as well. I think that would be great. And so I'm gonna make myself a note and figure out a way to fit that in as well. I'm gonna ask to let us get open. We've got some mask decisions that need to be made. We've got some opening decisions that need to be made, but yes, that again is another item. And I'm gonna ask you to continue to remind and don't let it drop away.
I won't.
Thank you.
Won't.
Okay, go for it, Clarice.
No, I was just going to say that, Dr. Freeman, one of the things that we've been trying to do as a commission is to get a high school liaison. And so maybe, when you were talking about the students wanting to be more involved, we would be, very happy to set that up to any candidates that would be willing to do that this school year.
Yeah, actually, Clarice, we have already have an answer from the principal, so we're having a meeting early September. So myself knows, so yeah, we'll sit on that one. Thank you anyway.
I was going to say that I was sure that Principal Chaff would want to move in that direction. I think it would be great to see a student rep on this commission.
Yeah. Thank you, Clarice.
Okay. So the question I have for you, Paul, I want to address the elephant in the room. One of the reasons we asked you to come in tonight was to talk about the initiatives in the Guilford school system. Thank you. I think you've done a wonderful job of outlining that. Can you tell us how the equity initiatives currently in place in the Guilford public school system differ from critical race theory from your point of view?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I really did appreciate the presentation that you all had last week on that topic. The simple fact is that none of these things fall under the definition of critical race theory. Critical race theory is a structure that came out of the study of law, acknowledging that systemic racism in our country has an impact on the practice and the implementation of law. And it's a really specific thing. Now it has spread to other areas, and other areas have said, well, how does systemic racism affect medicine? Or how does systemic racism affect all sorts of things? I think what's confusing to a lot of people is that tonight, as I spoke, I used a lot of the same words that your presenter last week used when she spoke about critical race theory. But the fact that she and I use the same words doesn't make this the same thing. If we were to have a conversation tonight and we were going to talk about submarines and airplanes, we would use a lot of the same words. We would talk about propellers and captains and pressure, but because we use the same vocabulary doesn't make the two things the same. I think your presenter said last week that as a law professor, she's unaware of any K through 12 school system that teaches critical race theory in a classroom setting. I've yet to meet, and I know lots of professors who teach critical race theory at the graduate or law school level. I've yet to meet one of them that says they know of a school system that is teaching critical race theory. And then I believe that the way critical race theory has become used as shorthand for any discussion of equity or social justice is misleading. So if people are saying that we're teaching the actual study of critical race theory, that's completely wrong. If people are using critical race theory as shorthand to say that we do want to talk about equity and race and racism and justice in our schools, then I would say that they're using the terminology wrong, but they're not wrong in saying that, yes, I mean, my slide says Equity and Social Justice Initiative. I've used the words race and racism repeatedly in this conversation. I think your speaker last week said, it is not racist to talk about race. And I agree with that. While we are not teaching critical race theory, I applaud her for that statement. I said in the beginning that we're doing this to support all of our students. All of our students deserve to leave Guilford schools feeling capable of talking about race and structure and societal structures. And if we don't get them to that place, then we're not preparing them to leave Guilford and move off into the wider world. So, when people ask me, do you teach critical race theory, yes or no? I've stopped trying to give a complex answer and I just say, no, we do not. It is not something taught in public schools. When people want to allow space for the more complex answer, we use some of the same vocabulary, but that doesn't make it the same thing. And if you're using it as shorthand to demonize the conversations we want to have in our schools, then I can't engage in that conversation because that's not a sincere conversation.
Okay, thank you for that, Paul. As you're talking about this, maybe because you mentioned submarines, it brought to mind quantum physics, right? So much like CRT, quantum physics is also a theory based on certain assumptions that we believe to be true, may in time prove not to be true, but from the best evidence we have are true. Also like CRT, quantum physics requires a certain level of pre-study and both academic and mental sophistication that is required to really understand its concepts. That being said, yes, we learn about gravity in grade school, and yes, we learn about, say, the interaction between light and matter in high school. Do you feel like that's a decent analogy?
That is so much better than my airplane submarine thing. I love that. And I'm going to use that moving forward with your permission. Yes, that is a really good analogy.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time here. Always happy to learn more about what is going on in Guilford Public Schools. I'm sure that many of the members of the public are also happy to have some more information about the equity initiatives and what's happening. So thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman.
All right, take good care.
I would recommend you stay for the next speaker though.
Yeah, Paul, if you're available to stay for the next speaker, yeah, it may be of some interest.
I was going to lurk around for a little bit, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And please, anyone who's here from the public, feel free to also lurk if you'd like. Okay, Kara, I know I saw your name earlier. There you are. Hi. Just to let you know, you're muted for the moment. Kara is with the Guilford Youth Alliance, and I understand that you're here with a proposal on their behalf that you'd like the GHRC to consider. Take it away.
Thank you, Joe. I'm not sure we've named ourselves, but we are indeed a group of recent alumni with concerns about these matters. So I am representing the group. So hi, everyone. I'll just introduce myself quickly. As Joe said, my name is Kara Fickrig. I graduated from GHS in 2011, and I'm now a PhD candidate studying mosquitoes at Cornell University. So thank you so much to the Guilford Human Rights Commission for allowing me to speak today about a proposed forum on the future of Guilford education regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's an honor to have the opportunity to speak today on this topic following Dr. Freeman. I think I've been given a very good setup to start this discussion. So thank you, Dr. Freeman. It's really exciting to hear about all the initiatives and work that's being done. So I'm proposing that the GHRC host a forum that would feature the stories of recent Guilford alumni about the education they received in Guilford. These stories would be similar to the hundreds that were received via email by the Board of Education last year. These stories were part of what motivated the Board of Ed to start looking into how certain aspects of Guilford education could be improved to better prepare students to go out into the world. I say Board of Ed inclusive also, Dr. Freeman. As you may have heard the Board of Ed members say, these stories were very compelling and important. And recent alumni are acutely aware of the ways in which their education has prepared or failed them for the next phase of their lives, since they've just experienced this transition. So I think that it's important that the full Guilford community has the opportunity to hear these stories so that they can understand why it is that so many alumni believe that the Guilford curriculum needs to be updated to better reflect the country's history, to make clear the connection between historical policies and current inequities, and foster an environment that is inclusive of people of all identities. And when I say identities here, I mean it in a more expansive sense beyond race and ethnicity, which has been the subject of most of the recent discussion, but also gender, sexuality, socioeconomic status, and other axes of identity. I recognize that opponents of these changes believe that teaching about topics like systemic racism would be harmful to their kids. And frankly, it's noble to want to protect your kids, but I think that these stories will help to show how, in fact, cloistering students and teaching them a whitewashed version of our country is ultimately harmful, both to them and to the communities that they enter after graduating. I also think that these stories will show that in almost every other regard, Guilford education is excellent. I know I personally felt very prepared when I got to Yale for my freshman year, with this one exception. Our town has a moral imperative to prepare our students for the complex world they'll enter, and to do any less would be a detriment to our students. Guilford is a special place, and students here are lucky to receive such a wonderful public education, but there is room for improvement, and it's time that we listen to those who experienced moving between this school system and the next phase of their life. I think that the GHRC would be a great host for this forum because of your purpose to promote mutual understanding and respect within Guilford among people of all identities. Given the rhetoric in town, it's clear to me that there are some deep misunderstandings about what is and isn't being taught in the schools. And by hosting this forum, the GHRC could provide an opportunity for the community to understand why so many alumni feel so passionately that Guilford Public Schools must be improved to better educate students specifically about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So this is just a brief description of what I envision for this forum, and I want to thank you again for allowing me this platform to share this idea, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Alex, I see your hand up.
Always. Kara,
Kara.
hi. Thank you for coming and sharing this idea with us. I'm a little unclear about your theory of action. Are you saying that the forum is to inform the public about the needs, the public who through our democratic elections of our school board have democratic oversight of our schools? Like, I understand that theory of action. Or is this is that your theory of action for how this will help improve the schools? Like, I'm not clear if your intention for the forum is that this will help to inform the schools, sorry, to improve the schools, or whether your theory of action is that this will inform the public about the need to improve the schools.
I think more the public. So most of these stories, or at least some version of them, have been told via email already to the Board of Ed, to Dr. Freeman. And so I think what would be very valuable is for the larger community to hear those stories, because there seems to be misunderstanding about the motivation for these changes. And seeing as these stories were part of what spurred more urgent need for change among decision makers, I think that perhaps hearing these stories may help parents who currently have fear about teaching students about these types of topics to see that actually this could really benefit their kids.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
I just want to say thank you for your presentation, and I totally agree. As I mentioned it to Paul, it's important that we educate our kids to go outside Guilford, go to college, go to other places, and this is something that is very important as you reach, that stage of your life, finish college and go get a job. These are topics that are out there, being discussed, and the earlier you can prepare kids to face those, issues, they're better off. And I think that by hearing your stories, right, the story from Guilford alumni, feeling that they were not prepared in that specific area when they graduated, I think hopefully will open the eyes of some parents that kind of question why we want to do this at high school level. I think it's very necessary. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely see what you were saying also earlier when you commented to Dr. Freeman. In academia, you have to write a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement now for all of your applications. So this is definitely something that Guilford students will ultimately meet with at some point in their lives. And so better to prepare them early so they're not, grappling with some realization that the world functions in a way that's very different than what they'd thought for the first 18 years of their life.
Yeah. I had a couple of quick questions. How about how many, just in your vision of what the ideal forum or event would look like, how many stories are you looking to tell, and what sort of, how did you want them told? Like, what sort of setting did you see it in? I don't know if you thought that far ahead.
Thank you for those questions. It's good to think about the logistics. I haven't nailed any of those down per se. I think Zoom would be great, or a Zoom webinar, just because a lot of our alumni are not in town and we want to make sure that we can have as many voices as possible. So I think that would make it more feasible for more people to attend. And then in terms of how many, maybe 10 or so. I think it depends a little bit on how many people I can find that would be willing to share their stories publicly. They can be quite personal. I know some people shared very personal stories in their emails, and I'm not sure necessarily people will want to tell those publicly. I'm hoping they will. The other thing is that this is at the center of such a fraught debate in town, so some people may not want to expose themselves to some of the online rhetoric that's been occurring. So I completely understand if some of the people who shared stories privately won't do so publicly, but I'm hoping I can find around 10 or so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Clarice, I know you've been waiting to jump in.
No, just wanted to thank her for her work. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Clarice.
Alex.
Are you thinking like an hour? Are you thinking like 2 hours? Like, in terms of that kind of logistics, what is your vision for the attention span of the attendees?
An hour seems reasonable. I think an hour would be a good target time. I mean, if I get an outpouring of people who want to share stories, I don't know, maybe we could go longer, but I think an hour is a good target time and probably a more reasonable target for the number of people I'd be able to find to speak.
I think also it would be good to consider, different identities as different topics. Maybe have more than just one of these forums. And, if there's something that we can do to lift up, the LGBTQ alums.
And current students, that would certainly help. And then have another one on gender or just ideas.
In this situation, I get a lot of people wanting to participate. That could be a way to do it, but more likely, I think, would be one. Maybe we could, organize it in a way that the story flows or something.
And actually, you're a scientist, so I think that you should consider writing a paper even in terms of the case studies of small town in Connecticut, how this kind of initiative could, drive an advantage of students going to college. So think about
She
it.
studies mosquitoes. I study education policy. This is my paper.
Oh no.
You can take it. You can take it.
Watch a Netflix flicks called Picture a Scientist, and you will understand what the science world is around women participation and underrepresented. I think she will be perfect to write that paper.
Thank you.
Well, before we give her any more homework, the question I have about this event, well, two actually. The first is that, do you feel that it would be appropriate, helpful, harmful to have question and answer period from the public following this, or would you prefer to present it as more of a visual storytelling piece that was just enclosed had the stories enclosed and standing on their own?
I think I'd want to check with the speakers first to see how they would feel about it, since they'll be sharing personal stories. If they'd be willing to engage in a question and answer period, I think that could be helpful. And especially if it's a curated one where there's someone filtering for questions that would be harmful to the speakers. So, but I would just want to make sure that people were comfortable being put on the spot, since they would have just kind of exposed some story from their life.
Well, and I don't think there's any pressure for to do a Q&A, just to be really clear about that. I think it could be a very powerful piece, almost a spoken word piece, just as a standalone. So if people do want to do a Q&A, and if you all feel that that would be additive and not take anything away from the experience, tacking on an extra half hour to make it a 90-minute presentation or webinar, I think would be fine. But there's definitely no pressure from us to do that.
Okay, thanks, Joe. That's good to consider.
In terms of timing and just that logistical piece, did you have any ideas about when this might be?
I think sometime later in September would be feasible, just to get all of the people ready to speak. I don't know. Is there a time? Mm-hmm.
So you think in 2 to 4 weeks you could line that many speakers up? That's a pretty short recruitment timeline in my experience, and I don't want you to be too ambitious, because this sounds like a really great idea.
That's a good point. I shouldn't overcommit. Could I get back to you after sending out some initial requests and see what the initial reception is like and how much deeper I'll have to dig to find speakers?
But it sounds like you're thinking early fall if you can. Is that right?
Yeah, I think especially since this is such a topic that's being discussed so much in town right now, I think it's timely, and I don't know how long that will remain to be the case. So yeah, sometime, I guess, October could work as well.
I think because we're talking about a webinar, I actually think that mid to late September is achievable. That gives us at this point, 3 or 4 weeks to organize, set a date, We could absolutely, if we vote this through, organize the webinar on this end and just take care of that piece. In addition, just like we did for the forum with Judge Robinson, we can ask GCTV to post a recording of it up onto YouTube so that we could provide a link for anyone who couldn't be there in person. The one logistical piece from our end is that we would need to secure permission from the Board of Selectmen to move forward with this. And the next meeting that we could present at would be the first Monday in September. Well, it may actually be the first Tuesday, depending on where Labor Day lies. But we can take care of that piece. If you feel like you want to aim for September and that's not, too much for everyone involved, I'm happy to work with you to coordinate that out.
Yeah, I think if we say late September, early October, it gives us some flexibility and then plan from there.
Okay.
Joe, I have some concerns about posting a video essentially permanently online of personal stories that people are going to be sharing about struggles that they had either in our schools or in their transition to their next educational steps or work steps. And I have some concerns that if that's going to be done, that when Kara is recruiting, that this could make it a little harder to recruit. And I always wonder about, I'm concerned about people who are generous enough to share their stories ending up burned in the long run when things are posted in ways that they are beyond their control and that they might lose sight of. And because we're asking them to be vulnerable, that we should be careful about whether or not we post such a thing on YouTube, and that's something that we need further consultation with Kara and maybe the participants before that decision is made.
I agree. And just to be very clear, in order to post anything on YouTube, GCTV requires written authorization from all participants. So this would not be something that would ever be done without full understanding and consent from everyone involved. But it's a good point, Alex. Thanks. So Kara, if you want to kind of vibe people out on that as well, it may be if there are some people who would really like to have their stories posted, we could record, say, put all of those people in the first half, record, and then stop recording when people who did not feel comfortable having them posted started to speak, or we could just, not go with the recording altogether.
Yeah, I think the option to allow people to decide whether they want it to be recorded or not would be good, because if someone has put effort into, telling their story and they may want it to reach more people, then I think allowing them to make the decision to have it recorded would be good. But as you've brought up, there's certainly the risk that it could be used in a way that would be harmful to the storyteller. And so we would want to protect people if they didn't want it recorded. So giving each person their own decision, I think would be a good way to handle it.
And I just had one other suggestion. You may think to either expand your pool as well if you're having trouble finding, enough people from your pool of recent grads, maybe even go back a few more years, because I have a feeling those stories go back a lot further than anybody thinks.
I'm sure.
I would like to make a motion that we move forward with this project and help Kara set up.
I second.
Stephanie. Okay, all in favor? Want to raise a hand?
Aye.
Are you up one? I can't see you. Okay, thank you. Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, great. Kara, if you would be willing to send me over just a draft of your proposal, I will plan to present that to the Board of Selectmen at the first meeting in September.
Wonderful. Thank you all for approving this moving forward. I really appreciate it. And again, thank you for the chance to speak.
Thank you so much
Thank you for
doing
joining us.
all this, Kara. Okay. It is 8:30, so let's see how quickly we can proceed through the rest of this agenda while still giving it the attention it deserves. Stephanie,
Yes.
we have on the Guilford Cultural Festival.
We have a date. We have a date. We have a date. We have a venue. So after, just to update everyone, after I put in the application to the Board of Selectmen's office, they approved the dates of Sunday, July 31st, 2022, as well as August 7th, 2022, which is the following Sunday. After getting that approval, they suggested that I speak with the Shoreline Arts Alliance, who runs their Shakespeare on the Green. And through talking with them, it has been decided that Sunday, August 7th, 2022 is going to be our go date for the first Guilford Culture Festival. And part of the reason we decided that, or that I kind of decided that in a vacuum, is that because the Shoreline Arts Alliance is going to have their staging up already for that week. So that'll be one, an expense we don't have to worry about, two, something they're willing to let us use, but then they're also, they also want to partner with us on this project. So that could mean using, any facilities that they already have up, like porta potties, waste management, that sort of thing. Juan, I was thinking about you during that conversation because you had already asked about that. And also because what they are thinking of an idea, this will be discussed when we get everyone together, is that what they would like to do is if we find, a dance company or somebody that they also work with, they could possibly have that dance company or whoever, the performer, do like a short promo or piece before their play every night leading up to the actual cultural festival so that we can get some more people interested. We are going to do a community planning meeting. I believe I said the 28th. I'm blanking on the date right now.
The 24th.
Sorry, the 24th, next Tuesday at 7. So I will go ahead and make a little announcement for that on the Facebook page.
That means Zoom?
I'm sorry?
Does that mean Zoom?
Yes, it will be on Zoom. I don't know why I leaned in closer like I needed to see you, but yes, it will be on Zoom, and that will be open to members of the community who have already expressed to me that they'd like to become involved, or other businesses and organizations who have decided they'd like to become involved. And then it can also be an informational session for those who have yet to decide if or how they would like to become involved. The one thing we are going to ask is that everyone on the committee be involved in one or two of the subcommittees that will come out of this. So this is going to be an all hands on deck project. Just keep your calendars marked for Sunday, August 7th, 2022.
51 weeks, count down the weeks. We're
Yeah.
at 51.
Count it down. I love countdowns. Let's do it.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephanie. Any questions for Stephanie about any of that? All right. Moving on to the Whitfield documents. As I mentioned, Eric can't be here tonight. I'll be meeting with him this weekend. So either he or I and Juan will have some information about this at our next meeting. We've got a deadline ticking on this, so we need to kind of pick up the pace in the next few months. Guilford Free Library summer sessions. We are waiting for the head of Witness to History to get back from an extended leave. He'll be returning in September, and so as soon as he's back, we'll reach out to him to connect with this project, since this is something we really wanted to do together. I did speak with a representative at the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven about this, at least very briefly. They are the lovely people who gave us the grant that paid for the majority of Judge Robinson's speaker fee. And when I shared what the library summer sessions would entail, they have suggestions for speakers who can be brought in to speak about the different topics involved in this curriculum, experts on these subjects, and it looks like may also very much be willing to fund this project. So I'm working with them as well. So hopefully we'll get a bit more information about that at our next meeting. So omission of Native American history on the Connecticut State website and the inclusion of Christian language in official Connecticut State documents. As I'm sure most of you remember, this was one of Andy's projects. We linked up with CHRO, who wanted to do this with us. My contact there has been completely overwhelmed with work for the past couple of months. And so I'm going to reach out to her again this week. And if they feel that they really can't get these things signed and over to us, I will probably propose at our next meeting that we go ahead and sign them ourselves along with Andy's name and send them to the recommended contacts that CHRO has provided for us.
Okay.
Would copies of those be distributed in advance of signing so that we can see them?
Yeah, they're in.
Fine, tell me later. Tell me later.
I'll send them to you. Now, let me make a note now or I won't remember. Yeah, we sent out copies of those in the agendas, but obviously you weren't on the commission yet. So I will send you copies of those so you can take a look. Yeah, absolutely. Guilford Performing Arts Festival. So this was slated to take place September 27th. I had a conversation with Peter Hawes on Monday about this, and out of an abundance of caution, due primarily to the Delta variant, we have collectively, along with one, decided to postpone this event until probably the new year. The Performing Arts Festival is going to be taking place outside under tents. This would have been inside at the community center, and it's just, yeah, not great timing. So we're looking forward to collaborating with them at the new year point. And one of the great things about that too is that it will help to keep the festival on the radar between actual festivals. Peter said that they've been wanting to do little projects between the festivals themselves for a long time. This would be their pilot. So it's sort of a win-win situation, and we're not potentially killing anyone in our community, which is a good thing for human rights. So we'll circle back around with him after the festival ends, because as I'm sure you can all imagine, he's got his hands quite full at this point.
Yeah.
At our last meeting, we discussed shifting to in-person meetings, and we were talking about doing that as a, the word just went right out of my head, in a way that, thank you, hybrid, thank you, Juan. Hybrid format with some of us in person and members of the public and whomever did not feel comfortable coming to the meetings, dialing in. I wanted to open this up again for discussion, and I want to give everyone an opportunity to weigh in about this idea or on this idea. I want to be very transparent and say up front that I, for myself, believe that we should remain on Zoom for the foreseeable future, both for the sake of ourselves, but also because we have members who have small children who cannot be vaccinated, and I don't
100%.
responsible for anything happening to said small children.
Yeah, I was gonna say my position has definitely changed. I was all for getting together, not so much.
Yeah, but even for us that probably been all vaccinated, until we get the booster shot, with the Delta variant, certainly it will be a concern. So
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I miss people, I miss personal meetings, I miss teaching in person, but honestly, I'm not even sure why this commission should ever meet in person, because of the ease of allowing the public on Zoom and the ease for all of our schedules when meetings go long. Like, I prepared dinner because I turned off my camera. Like, this is way easier. But certainly now, no, not even close, not even close.
Okay.
Well, we do have a couple of people, one member specifically, for whom culturally it is very important to be face-to-face with people in a room. That being said, that's something that we can work out in the future if we do per town order right now. My understanding is if we did go back to in-person, we would have to offer a hybrid format. All of that aside, I'm going to propose that we revisit this to maybe January.
I like January.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
After
the
cold and
moment,
flu season really gets hit.
okay.
See
So-
where we're really dealing with here.
All right, so I would like to make a motion that GHRC meetings will take place exclusively on Zoom through the end of this calendar year.
Second.
Thank you, Alex. All in favor? Raise your
Aye.
hand. That's
Aye.
unanimous.
Okay,
And Sue, I hope that decision works for you too. Yeah,
perfectly. Yes, I agree.
good. Okay, great. Moving right along. Clarice, incorporating land recognition at the beginning of our commission meetings.
Yes, it's something I was thinking about, after the two presentations that Judge Robeson gave us. She took the time to acknowledge the land that we are in. And so I feel like as a Human Rights Commission and, in the direction that the town has been moving, with the mascot change and all that, I think this would be something that would be great for us to incorporate into our meetings, as well as suggest that other boards and commissions in town consider adding to their regular agenda as well. So,
I sent out along with the agenda, a fairly lengthy piece about land recognition. And I want to be very clear that the reason I sent it out was not because I feel that we as a commission should undertake something of that scope at this time. Clarice, I think from what you communicated to me, it was doing something very similar to what Judge Robinson did, which is just opening our meetings with a brief statement and acknowledgement of the Minnetonka tribe and the fact that we are on their land. So I think I really like that idea. I would definitely want to draft something and run it by Eric, who Alex, just FYI, he's one of our members who is Native American. So I think it would be important to get his buy-in on it.
no, of course, I was
Oh, yeah,
definitely
yeah.
gonna reach out to him.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw that out. Alex, you're
Yeah.
so polite. You always raise your hand. We all talk over each other like cretins. You're great.
Such bullshit.
This first.
That is not who I am. You don't know me. I am trying. This is my first meeting. I am trying to be polite. No, I do try to ask questions that amplify others, that give people the opportunity to explain on their points. I try to ask clarifying questions. I do, but I disagree on this one. I do not disagree with the value that I think that Clarice is speaking from. I do not disagree that there is incredible moral weight in such a statement. I'm not disagreeing about the value. I worry about, and Joe, I think you've heard me talk about this concern, and I'm going to apply it here. Fellow members of the commission, you're going to hear me bring this view up a lot. I know where I am on these things. I mean, I opened myself to the public and to you guys. I'm a crazy lefty liberal. I am. But I think about reaching credibility for the community, what we can do to move the middle to be a little more understanding and a little more supportive of our values and goals. And maybe not quite the middle. I mean, we're not going to reach people who are totally opposed to us, but there are people who maybe we have a chance to. And I look at things that I believe in and that I can talk to my friends and my colleagues and my partners about, and that I could talk to Clarice about. And like, we could say yes, but I worry about when the commission puts itself out as saying, this is who we are, whether it paints the commission as being so far to the left that we, from the beginning of the topic or the meaning, lose people that we might be able to get because we seem too woke. Okay, I am too woke. And if I start talking about my own personal opinions and what I really think, I am where I am. But I really want, the reason why I agreed to serve on this commission, that the reason why I was involved in trying to get it approved in the first place, is that I want to create change among our community, greater understanding and recognition, finding where the incremental progress is. Representation is so crazy important. I am not arguing against the value of representation. That is crazy, crazy important. That is super important. There is value in that. There is great value in that. But I want to balance that out. I would like the commission to balance that out against what can we do also to try to be credible to the people who don't already agree with us. And so my concern about, and I don't know what the statement would look like. I know what Joe sent out, right? And the one that Joe sent out was very ambitious. I think as Joe said,
all again.
totally. I know. I do not know what Clarice's vision is on this or how simple or all of that, but I am always going to be concerned, and you guys will frequently hear me talk about this. What does this do to our credibility with the people in the middle or in the center right that maybe we might be able to get otherwise, and we don't want to appear like we are so different from them that they wouldn't listen to us. That's my concern.
So I think one of the main things I'm hearing as a concern is that, not obviously knowing, because it hasn't been written yet, what it might look like as opposed to what I sent out, along with the agenda. So I'm wondering, would it make sense for us to draft something?
Oh, totally.
And
Yeah.
then just to start out, and then we can kind of see how it feels, how it reads. Would that make sense?
Totally. And in a part, I like the opportunity to raise this concern early so that when it's being drafted, we can think about how we meet the important goal of recognition and representation, while also thinking about this other issue that I have raised. And maybe there's a way to balance that in the drafting in a way that maybe it's a compromise, maybe it's not a compromise, but that can honor both concerns.
Alex, I'm pretty sure I'm hearing you volunteer to write and draft a balanced version of this land acknowledgement. Did I hear that right?
I don't think you did.
I'm pretty sure I did.
If you had said, as a former high
Sounds
school
like
English
it to
teacher, we could really rely on your wisdom in this, then maybe.
Alex, as a former English teacher, we could really rely on your wisdom in this.
I am so smallpox infested blanket.
Welcome to the commission, Alex.
God, give me something that's anything to do with schools. Schools.
Does have to do with schools.
Well, everything is built on the land, right?
I'm actually not going to pin you down quite that hard.
Yeah, I am not comfortable with being the one to author this. One, I'm a little skeptical about it in the first place.
Okay.
I could partner with someone, but this is not my issue. And when I think about representation, this is, I don't think I'm the right person. I don't think I could honor the intent the way that is important for the people who are going to most feel this, that they're going to feel served by me. That is not a fancy way to duck. That is not a fancy way to duck.
It would be a very, very fancy way to duck if that were what you're doing, but I believe that it is not. Clarice, since you were the one who brought this to us, you want to take a stab at this? I'd be happy to help you, and we can reach out to Eric as well.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
I'd partner with Clarice if Joe is overworked, but I'm not comfortable being the lead on this.
And Joey, I just want to make a comment, right? And to welcome Alex.
Thank you.
And I just want to make sure that from what you were saying, and certainly we talk about this when we get the introduction, right? I do understand where you're coming from, but you know what? For the last 30 years, I've been hearing, slow down. You want people to follow. For how long are we going to slow down? For how long are we going to stay in the middle? For how long we're not going to be standing up and present, right? So that's why, I do understand, and I sympathize with that we want to make sure that we get the changes that we want done. We need to bring the majority. The majority, of course, are white. So you had to include everyone. But with that said, we should not compromise our principles, our ideas, right? And I'm not slowing down anymore, right? So with that said, I think it was a good compromise to have you both, Clarice and yourself, writing the statement, and we'll see how it goes. So.
Also, if I'm included, then you co-opt me, and it's harder for me to vote against.
That's right.
There is that.
I still might.
Alex,
I don't know.
Do you feel comfortable partnering with Clarice on this? Seriously?
Clarice is awesome. She's great.
I
Why
know,
wouldn't I
but
feel
not-
comfortable partnering with Clarice?
Not because of Clarice, because of the issue.
Oh, the issue. Look, I'm not saying that I'm going to endorse the product, but I can work in good faith as a partner, as a junior partner, to work with her and to wordsmith and to see what we can get to see where it goes, because I could be wrong.
Great. Okay. So I will also rely on the two of you to reach out to Eric on this and get his buy-in, because that's kind of important. Excellent.
I think we already have each other's email addresses, right, Clarice? I think that we've emailed about something in the past. Okay.
You know that, and actually that reminds me.
Know your phone number and where you live too, Alex.
Yeah, so everybody's up on the commission website, but I'm going to update the contact list as well, since we've had some changes. And Sue, I'll send that over to you for dissemination as soon as.
Okay.
I have a quick question about that. My phone number is not accurate on that, but I'm not sure that I want it to be accurate. Do our phone numbers have to be listed? Can we have like email addresses instead? Does it have to be phone numbers?
I don't think so. I can check in with Tracy tomorrow in the selectman's office and find out. So you
In this
prefer-
era, I'm surprised that people's personal phone numbers are being listed.
So you'd prefer to have your email address only listed on the town website? Yep. Okay. I will check in with Tracy tomorrow. Okay.
There are crazy people out there.
There
That's
Not
why
in
you don't-
Guilford.
There are
Not
crazy
in
people
Guilford.
here.
No one in
That's-
are
Guilford.
crazy people on this committee.
Yes.
That's why you don't answer your phone anymore. You just let it go to voicemail. That's why.
Let them leave a message.
Yeah, they
All
don't leave a
right,
message.
so-
They're not gonna answer.
I would like to make a motion to move forward with drafting
Yeah.
a Native American land acknowledgement to be used.
Second.
Okay, one. Second. All in favor? Raise a hand. That's unanimous. Okay, moving right along. Anti-Defamation League Walk Against Hate, Stephanie.
Yes, so the ADL is hosting a Walk Against Hate. There's an opportunity for people to participate virtually or in person. When I sent this idea for the agenda, I was not as concerned about the Delta variant. Now I am. So I don't know that forming a live person team would be best, although there is a way to do that safely. People don't have to walk next to each other, but I just thought it would be something that would be cool if we could get a community team together to participate in that. It is October 10th, which is, I believe, a Saturday.
That's Hartford, right?
The one in person is taking place in Hartford. I can't remember the exact location, but
This is a Sunday. Sorry to interrupt.
yeah, it is a Sunday. Okay, I thought so. But yeah, I thought that would be something that we could, and by we, I mean me and some cohorts from the squad, could head up a team to participate. I think it's something that's right up our alley.
You have
I
a
think
squad?
Our squad, meaning the commission.
Okay. Okay.
And also because the ADL does, wonderful work, and it would be a great way for us to support them in the community.
I like it. I like the idea of doing a virtual walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People in
Can I do that from my couch?
As long as you got a step counter, sure.
Just see Alex walking his wrist
Yeah, you just
forth across
Get
the
one of those
property.
under the desk things and just.
Okay.
So yes, I don't know. I went to the website. It's pretty easy to just sign up. They do ask that you try to raise some money. It's not required, but I don't think it's something people would have, an issue donating, $5, $10 here. So I'm happy to coordinate that.
Page 11 of the agenda. That's the flyer. Is that right?
Yes.
Is there anything for the commission to do, or is this just you're raising our attention to this so that we all know?
Just raising the attention, encouraging participation. I think I was going to do it anyway, but like I said, I thought it would be a nice way for the commission as a whole to publicly and visually support the work the ADL does by actually having our own team with members from the commission and from the community.
Yeah, I like it. And we can promote it online,
Yeah.
social media. Yeah. I'm in favor of it.
So does somebody else have to make the motion? Can I do it?
Go for it. Make the motion.
I would like to make a motion to participate in the ADL Walk Against Hate
As a commission.
as a commission.
I'll second.
Yay!
Second.
All in favor?
That's unanimous.
Unanimous.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
So 2 more items. We're closing in. I have received a lot of texts, emails, mostly to my personal email, to the Guilford Human Rights email with questions, actually both before the forum and after. And one lovely member of our community asked, is there a GHRC mailing list? And if there is, can I be on it? And I thought, well, I know there isn't, and that's a great idea, because we do have quite a few people who are following us now who are not on social media. So I have familiarity with Constant Contact. I don't know if there are other group email platforms that might be better, but certainly we could do a Facebook blast, and I could send out emails to the people who have contacted us asking if they wanted to join. Alex.
So I just want to clarify, because I misunderstood the first thing. You're not talking about an internal mailing list for members of the commission.
No.
You are talking about a one-to-many, an email blast list for people who are interested.
Yep.
The vision for what this would be roughly analogous to the Facebook feed. Is that right?
Well, it would be a lot fewer posts than the Facebook feed. So this we could do links to the recordings of our meetings. I'm envisioning something that would probably go out once a month. So
you're really talking about a brief
newsletter, like a newsletter.
Yeah, we're saying at the same time.
Yeah, I think if you just put in the commission website, whatever, Facebook, sign up, right? Just go put your email address, your name. That's all the legal thing that we need. They're volunteering their email, and then we can just send it to that distribution list every time we want to communicate something. That to me is
yeah. And so when we do have things that are sort of last-ish minute, like the forum with Judge Robinson, we have the social media platform, but we can also do a blast. And in the meantime, it'll give us an opportunity to let people know what's going on, what we're doing. I mean, we had a lot of people here tonight that were clearly primarily interested in seeing Dr. Freeman talk, which is completely understandable. Members of the community might also be interested in some of the other things we're doing too. And I think
I thought they want to meet Alex, but anyway.
I think it'd be useful at some point too to actually, we've talked about this before and haven't done it, to highlight the members of the commission, just so people know who we are a little bit more, what our backgrounds are, the fact that we do in fact all live in Guilford, the fact that we are not all members of the radical left. You know,
I'm kind of a member. No. I have 2 questions, and I will put down my hand. One, if you need someone to look into platforms for doing this, I'm comfortable looking. I'm comfortable with that.
Great.
Good.
2, see, I did volunteer.
You did.
2, we are a government something, right? We are not nonprofit, right? We are not private.
Right.
So when I look at the options that are available, I'm looking for government, public use, whatever. If there was some annual fee, let's say for the sake of argument, $100 a year, I have no idea. I pulled that out of my something. There's no money.
Budget.
No
we
money.
Have no money. Yes.
Got it.
I believe we're going to be in the budget next year.
But there's no money this year. Got it. Got it. That is what I needed to know.
And I will also check with Tracy again. I need to send her flowers or something because I'm bothering her so much. But once you've determined what you think might be the best fit for, we should check with Tracy just to make sure as a town body we can use that. Or
who is Tracy?
Actually,
the town lawyer.
Tracy Brinkman. No, she's not the town lawyer. That's no, that's Peter Barrett. Tracy Brinkman is in the selectman's office. It may be. Well, no, actually that wouldn't work. Yeah, so we just need to check with her too and make sure it's all.
Yeah, I think the simple distribution list in Outlook in our email account. I mean, someone who had to type the email. It should be one free option, I guess. But
There's also Google Groups is a free option. The thing
Right.
that we want to be careful of, the thing we most want to be careful of, is that we are protecting the email addresses, the identities of anyone who signs up for the list.
right, you do a
And-
blind copy, whatever, BCC
yeah.
copy for everyone. No, from
But
the
but also we don't want it from an individual. We want it from like the Human Rights Commission, right? Is there a Human Rights
Right.
Commission email
Yeah.
address?
Yeah.
Yes?
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
No, what I was referring was that you don't put the names, so you put in a blind copy. or
Yes,
email
yes,
address,
understood.
So
Understood.
nobody else can see who else is in the distribution. So.
I would say that I am more in favor of using a platform like Constant Contact because for a few reasons. One is the privacy issue. I think you're a little bit better about protecting privacy. Second, it lowers the possibility of user error, like me putting everybody's names into a CC instead of a BCC.
Okay.
Mhm, mhm.
And third, it gives people the opportunity to opt out and
Yeah.
they deal with it rather than people having to contact us and
Mhm.
then we have to do
That's a big management job.
Yeah.
I mean, we would want it to be a highly subscribed to list, which means that it's work to manage it. And we don't want to change infrastructure midway once it gets big. Also, all of these platforms would give us a little more information on what one, we wouldn't have to deal with like bounce back and bad addresses. That's not our problem. And we might even be able to get stats on who opens it and reads it, like how many people open it and read it. So there's all kinds of advantages.
Don't we have something like that with Park and Rec? I mean, I received the newsletter from them with all the offerings. Do we go to Park and Recreation?
No, I want to keep it completely separate. I don't know if there's.
No, I'm just learning what
They
use.
use
right?
Constant Contact as well.
Oh, they do.
So we can
They're
figure
really
out we
industry
don't have a
leading.
budget or something, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if they use Constant Contact, chances are we'd be allowed to as well.
Yeah.
So maybe we can start there. And by
Yeah.
you, Alex.
I think they're industry leading. The question is, what would the fee be for?
Well, and I mean, depending on what it is, we might be able to either get a small grant from like Guilford Foundation, not even a grant, sponsorship, or something like that. So yeah, see what you come up with. If there is a fee, just let us know and we'll see if it's the best option. Then we'll see where we can get some money for it.
I'll have something at the next meeting to
Thank you.
talk about.
Awesome, excellent. Any other questions?
So how, I mean, I understand the advertisement aspect of it to promote our events and forums, but what, how is this going to differ from like the monthly, how's that going to differ from our agenda minutes that Sue puts together?
Well, so if there's an event or something that's coming up fast, like the forum we just had, we can send out an email blast so that anybody who's not on social media can see it.
Also, I think there's a tone difference, right? So the agenda is very businessy and is not designed to be an easy read to inform people about blah, right? And so that tone, that readability would lead to a very different kind of writing and hopefully a different kind of receptivity and a different kind of audience.
Right, but also the agenda, you had to go to the website and open the agenda. In this case, we're saying we're gonna send
We're pushing it
information.
out, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so
Last.
I don't know that we need to make a motion on this.
No, there's nothing to
next
decide.
9 o'clock.
I'm going to investigate and I will report back and then we can figure something out.
Okay. You still have your hand up, by the way.
Oh,
I
I'm
put it down and I put it down and you put it back up. I think we're getting into some control play online here, Alex. Stephanie.
My mom's a shrink. Don't be my mother.
I will never be a mother, I promise. Or my father, for that matter. God love him. Stephanie, you want to bring us
Someone has to.
home with the possibility of a GHRC Instagram account?
Yeah, so I don't even know if it's necessary, but I feel like, there is a population of people that are moving more towards the Instagram and the TikTok. I do not propose to be a TikTok knowledgeable person, nor do I want to be. But I do think that you know, having the Instagram page to complement our Facebook page may help us reach out to, you know, a different demographic, or maybe even have a larger reach, because there are
Under 30.
well, just
Right.
also too, there's a population of
Thank
people
you.
over 40 who are becoming disgusted with Facebook and have actually
That too. Yeah.
moved away from it and are using Instagram a little bit more. Some of
Which
those
is owned by Facebook.
yeah, which is owned by Facebook, but for some reason doesn't seem to have the same issues yet. So just as a compliment to the Facebook page.
Would you essentially echo the posts, or would we essentially echo the post? It's just finding a second platform on
Yeah,
which to post them.
There's a way to link up the Instagram account to the Facebook account. So whatever is posted on Instagram
It's posted
automatically
to-
goes
exactly,
onto Facebook.
and vice
It's-
versa.
Well, I'm not sure that it could be vice versa, because you can embed links and all kinds of things on Facebook that you cannot embed on an Instagram posting. So like
Until
when
you
people
have
post
X
on
number of
it,
followers. Sorry, Alex. Once you reach a certain threshold of followers on Instagram, then you can start posting links.
oh, can you really?
What is, do you know
Okay.
what the numbers off the top of your head? Is it 1,000?
I think it's, I
5,000?
want to say 5,000.
It's a high number.
It's a high number, but you know,
So
aim high.
So the point I'm making is that if Facebook is the way that we primarily think, because we're old, I just mean me, I don't mean any of the rest of you are old, I'm old. If that's the way we think about posting, and we're not Instagram native people ourselves, then someone is going to have to learn how to adapt the Facebook postings to a format that will work on Instagram, given that Instagram has slightly
Clarice and
different
I would
rules.
do that. We're both already very active. I'm very active on Instagram. She's very active on Facebook. So that would be a decent compliment, I think.
Yeah, and something I was thinking real quickly is that I made slides of how to establish a human rights commission based on what we did here in Guilford. That might not be a terrible way to kick it off on Instagram.
You could definitely share those slides on Instagram.
I mean, they could each be in an individual post. I just have
Exactly.
to shift them to have our logo. Yeah, anyway. Okay, so I would like to propose that we open or start a Guilford Human Rights Commission Instagram account that Stephanie would primarily manage. Second, was that Alex?
Yes.
I wasn't looking. Thank you, Alex. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Yay. I love these unanimous decisions.
All right, who wants to make the most popular motion of the evening?
Clarice.
Motion to end the meeting.
Second.
Stephanie seconded.
Who was that? Okay. So,
I think we're all unanimous
In favor,
in
yeah.
favor of that.
Aye.
This was a long one, guys. Thanks for hanging in there, especially you, Alex. Baptism by fire. Welcome to it.
It was a good
Thank
one.
you,
though.
everyone. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's nice to meet you,
Okay,
Alex.
okay.
all right.
All
Okay.
right.
Bye-bye. Good
night,
night,
everybody.
everyone.
Night.
Bye.
That
Okay.
was a long one.
It was a long one. How are you doing?
Yeah. My finger was about to fall off, but we just made it.
There. Okay.
So Joe, the next meeting, are we going back to 2 meetings a month? So we're still just doing one in September.
Yeah.
Okay.
As far
Okay.
as I know.
Okay. So is that going forward, or is that?
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
as far as I know, and this is just me, and we can certainly talk
Oh,
about
yeah.
this moving forward.